I invite you to be seated. And I invite any boys and girls that want to get coloring supplies and find a spot on the floor. This is one of my very most favorite stories out of the Bible. And it only shows up on Easter Sunday, one of the years. And I never get to preach on it because, of course, that whole resurrection thing always takes precedence over Peter and Cornelius. So it is a real joy to be able to share this story with you. See, in Caesarea, there was a man, and his name was Cornelius, and he was an important officer in the Roman army. He was also, though, a devout man. He loved God. He was in awe of God. And he encouraged all of his household to be devoted to God as well. He was a generous man. He gave as he saw need, and he constantly prayed. And it was about 3 o'clock one afternoon that Cornelius had a vision. He had a vision. He very clearly saw an angel of God come to him and say, "Cornelius, Cornelius." And Cornelius stared at the angel. He was so terrified, and he said, "What is it, Lord?" And the angel answered, "Your prayers have been heard, and your alms have ascended to heaven as a memorial before God. So now, Cornelius, send your men to Joppa. Send them and ask them to find Simon, who is called Peter, and he's staying with a tanner named Simon, and he has a beautiful seaside home." And the angel left. And so Cornelius called 2 of his slaves and 1 of his most devout soldiers, and he told them everything the angel had said, and he sent them immediately to Joppa. Well, it was noon the next day in Joppa, and Peter was there, and he was up on the roof of the house of Simon the tanner, praying, and he was hungry. He was hungry, and while he was waiting for someone to bring him his lunch, he fell into this trance. And in the vision that God sent to him, he saw the heavens open up and a great big huge sheet descend from heaven, being held by its 4 corners, and on that sheet were all manner of 4-footed creatures and reptiles and birds that fly through the air. And a voice from heaven said, "Peter, get up, kill something and eat it." Peter said, "No, by no means, there's no way I will do that, for I would never presume to eat anything that is unclean or profane." Well, the voice said to him, "Peter, what God has made clean, you may not call profane." Well, this happened again. The sheet descended, kill and eat. "No way, God, I cannot do this. No, Peter, what God has declared clean, you may not declare profane." It happened 3 times, and then the sheet ascended into heaven, and Peter was very, very puzzled about what to make of this vision. But while he was puzzled, the men sent by Cornelius were approaching the house, and they asked for Simon, who was called Peter, if he was staying there. And Peter was still up on the roof, very, very perplexed. And the Spirit said to him, "Look, Peter, there are 3 men. There are 3 men downstairs. They are knocking on the door. They're looking for you. Get up, Peter. Go down there and go with them. Don't hesitate, because I have sent them to you." So Peter went down and met with the men, and he talked with them, and he said, I am Peter. I'm the one you're looking for. Why are you here?" And they said, "Well, Cornelius, who is who is a righteous army officer, upright, God-fearing. By the way, he is really well thought of by everyone in the Jewish nation. He was directed by an angel to send for you, Peter. So you are to come to his house and hear what he has to say so he can hear what you have to say. So Peter invited them in, and they spent the night, and the next day he got up, and indeed, as God has directed, he went with them. And some of the believers accompanied him. The following day they came to Caesarea, and Cornelius was expecting them, so he'd gathered together all of his family and many of his friends. And on Peter's arrival, Cornelius ran out and met him and fell down at his feet and began to worship him. But Peter said, "No, get up, I'm merely a man." And they talked. And he went in and he found this whole congregation had been gathered together, and he said, "You all know this is wrong. This is not right. I should not be here among you. I, a Jew, should not be associating or visiting with you Gentiles. But God has shown to me that I should not call anyone profane or unclean. So I was sent for, and I came. Now why did you send for me?" And Cornelius said, "Well, 4 days ago, at this very time, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I had a vision. And an angel said to me, 'Cornelius, your prayers have been heard, your alms have been seen. Send to Joppa for Simon, who's in the house of Simon the tanner.' And I sent for you immediately, and you have been kind enough to come. And so we're all here just waiting to hear what you have to say." And that is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. That's a great story about two men who are both hungry. So hungry. Cornelius for a deeper relationship with God, and Peter, well, for lunch. But in their hunger, God comes to them in this vision. And Cornelius is told to send for Peter. He doesn't tell him why, he just tells him who and where he is. And Cornelius, boom, immediately obeys. Peter, on the other hand, has to be convinced. Really, Peter, kill something off that blanket and eat it. It's okay. 3 times it's lowered. 3 times they have the argument. 3 times Peter refuses. Peter's always been a little bit of a slow learner, we know, but eventually he gets the message. Eventually he obeys the voice. Eventually he goes to Cornelius, and this whole community of faith grows in amazing ways as God has intended it to happen. Peter, Cornelius, both instructed to go out on a limb, Gentile, Jew, to meet together, to do what is unconventional, unheard of, to take a huge risk in the name of faith. Because that's what people of faith are so often called to do. As Lutherans, we don't like risk. We face it with mostly fear and trepidation. We have a mantra. Who can tell me what that mantra is? We never did it that way before. Absolutely. There is truth to that. Risk. It seems unreasonable. It seems scary. And for heaven's sakes, why would you put yourself through something scary and new when what is tried and true is working just fine? Thank you very much, even if it's not working quite so well as it could. And yet think of all the things that we have, that we experience, that we would not have or experience or be able to do if somebody hadn't taken a risk. Flight, electricity, Velcro, vaccinations, fair employment practices, just To name a few, somebody somewhere had an idea, and they risked ridicule, they risked perhaps their life savings, they risked perhaps their standing in the community. For some of these, they even risked life or limb to take a chance that there was a way to improve the quality of life in this world. I mean, and think about our history in the Lutheran Church. Had Luther not taken a risk to stand up to the Pope and to Rome, we'd still be selling indulgences to get out of purgatory. And what on earth would we teach our middle school children if we didn't have the small catechism? Had Philip Melanchthon not taken that risk and sidled up to Luther, we wouldn't have the amazing Augsburg Confession to guide our amazing theology. Those are big risks that people took, but we take risks every single day. I venture a guess that at least 4 or 5 days a week, most of you get up out of bed and crawl into a car outside of your front door. Maybe you go to church, to the store, to work, to visit someone. That's a risk. We get married, or we choose to stay single. We form friendships. We birth or adopt children. We bring home that adorable little puppy that we found. We own or rent a home. We go on vacation. We join a church. We purchase food. We cook new recipes. We learn a new hobby. We buy power tools. We try to fix our own appliances based on those silly little YouTube videos. All of these things are risks that we take all the time, and for the most part, we think nothing of it. And churches take risks. We do lots of risky things. We change our liturgy seasonally. We sing new songs or hymns occasionally. We add things at times to our worship, and sometimes we take something away. All in the interest of speaking a word of life in ways that will enliven the relationship that we all have with one another and with Jesus Christ. And we think nothing of most of these things. They're just part of the flow of church life, and eventually we'll get to sing Amazing Grace again. We change the shape of our worship space from time to time. We added PowerPoint a number of years ago. We invite children to lay on the floor close to the doors and draw pictures. Some weeks we have intinction. Some weeks we don't. We risk inviting neighbors in for soup and sandwiches and salad. In a couple of weeks, we'll open our doors to a whole bunch of small children for Mad Camp. And we allow outside groups to use our building unsupervised. We don't think these things are risky, but they are. They are. When we form relationships, we risk having our hearts broken. When we open our buildings, we risk wear and tear and maybe even damage. When we open our church to the stranger, we maybe risk losing things that are important to us. But what we also risk is growing and coming to know Jesus better. We risk seeing our Savior through the eyes of someone else and finding an aspect of Christ's mercy reflected back at us in ways that we had not previously even imagined. Some level of risk keeps Christ's church alive and vibrant. Right now, we're in the middle of some risky time here. Anxiety levels are fairly a little higher than normal as I talk to people. We don't know what God has in store for our future. We don't know what it's going to look like if we come closer to our brothers and sisters at Concord. And it's a little scary. We don't know what's going to happen when the pastor leaves for 3 months. Some of us are afraid she's not going to come back And some of us are afraid she will. And some of us wonder how in the heck we're going to be taken care of. And somebody wonders what's going to happen to our traditions. There are so many unknowns. I have my own. I've never walked 400 miles before. And I was 22 the last time I spent 24/7 with my dad. And I've never been away from Matt for that long. And I don't know who I am apart from being your pastor. There are a lot of unknowns out there. And we could call it quits right now, and we could drop all these risks, and God would still be here and still love us. But just imagine if Cornelius had said, I'd really rather not meet Peter. How sad that he and his whole family might never have been baptized. And imagine if Peter would say, no, thank you, I don't care for a shrimp cocktail today. We would never have had such a clear vision of God's mercy for all people. We would not have had such a clear understanding that all people are invited into relationship with Christ and Christ's church, and that it's okay to make room for everyone in our pews, our churches, our hearts, and our lives. We would not have had such a magnificent example of how the Christ who calls us into risk is the Jesus who walks with us and beside us through every moment of it. So let's set aside that mantra for just a few months. Let's see where Christ is calling us to be church together, experience Jesus in new and exciting ways. And let's walk side by side into an unknown future, assuming the risk and trusting that God will be as God always has been, in the midst of the fear and the joy and the excitement of every moment of it. Amen.